Cause of Laughter Chapter 19. Generously abandoning the Han family restaurant to say goodbye. Blurry blood left behind. Rape at Shadow Mountain Temple. But it was said that Shugu saw Jiashu and Helena walking side by side in the park, and heard someone say that they were an unmarried couple, and then she suddenly realized, no matter what, appearance is always the prerequisite for a man's love for a woman. I already have nothing to worry about, so why bother getting involved in the whirlpool again? The random thoughts I had just now were too inexperienced. Thinking of this, I started laughing. Regardless of General Liu, Uncle Fan, or Miss Shen, I don't need to ask any questions. I'd better go home and stay with my father. Having made up my mind, I walked out of the park without hiring a car. Exiting the park is the old stone Imperial Road outside Tiananmen Square. The green locust trees on both sides of the Royal Road left two cool shades in the clear sunlight. Shugu walked slowly under the shade, step by step. I just walked like this, but unexpectedly I came to a place not far from the General Emergency Hospital. I thought since I was here, why not stop by and see Fengxi? From now on, this poor child and I will never see each other again. With this thought in mind, he turned around and headed towards the hospital. Just as he was about to enter the hospital gate, he saw the car General Liu was sitting and blocking the gate. He was stunned for a moment, and when he was about to turn away, General Liu opened the car door, smiled and waved. You came here once, why did you come to see her? Let's go home together. As he spoke, he got out of the car and was about to help Shugu. Shugu thought that it would be embarrassing if she didn't go and just mess around on the street. Fortunately, she had made up her mind. Even if I go with him, I am not afraid of him with my own skills. So I smiled slightly and got into the car with General Liu. When they arrived at Liu's house, General Liu asked her to go upstairs. He smiled and shook her hand and said, the man in the hospital may not be able to survive. If you follow me, maybe I can straighten you out. After hearing this, Shugu's blood boiled, and it rushed to her face, as if the muscles in her body were trembling. General Liu saw the red color on her face, and said with a smile, there are no outsiders here, why are you ashamed? Tell me, are you willing to do this? Shugu smiled and said, why don't I want to? Because I'm afraid I won't have that kind of blessing. General Liu shook her hand twice, and said with a smile, you look like an honest kid, but you are also very good at talking. Our happy event will be decided the day after tomorrow. What do you think? Have you told your father? Shugu said, I told you, he is very willing. He also said that after the happy event, he would come to see you and ask you to run an errand for him. General Liu clapped his hands and said with a smile, do you still need to say this? If you don't run errands for your father-in-law, who should you run them for? Tonight, no matter what, you have to accompany me to dinner. Let the people below see you first. I have lifted you up, so as not to have a wedding the day after tomorrow. They said you came unexpectedly. Shugu said, you have a happy event on the left and a happy event on the right. What are your plans for this happy event? When General Liu heard about it, he stretched out his hand and scratched his hair, and said with a smile, I feel a little embarrassed about this matter. If it gets big, I will be very casual about who I marry first. Marrying you will make the excitement even more exciting, which is a bit unreasonable. Besides, the time is too urgent, and it seems that it can't be done. If it's casual, I'm afraid you won't want to. Shugu said, I don't care about this. It's just that the people below look down on you. I have a way. Firstly, you can save yourself some trouble, and secondly, I can avoid being looked down upon by the people below. General Liu smiled and said, with this good idea, am I still unhappy? What do you want to do? Shugu said, if you ask me to think of this method, I can't think of it. I remembered that in the past, some people also ran away to the western mountains with the bride to save trouble. When they came back, they said that the wedding was over and they didn't even invite the guests. It would be better if we did this. When General Liu heard this, he jumped up with laughter, took Shugu's hand and said, my little baby, if you are willing to do this, I will save a lot of trouble. I am also an impatient person. I wish I could do it right away. If we had to do it together, it would be too late in today's. Now, if we just go up to Zishan, what would be the trouble? We have a car, and we can do it anytime. There is no need to get out of the city anyway. We're calling back and forth. Do you think we'll go there today? Shugu said, with a smile, didn't you say you won't be busy for a day or two? General Liu shrugged his shoulders and tilted his head to Shugu. He looked at her face and said with a smile, I don't know what's going on. The more I look at you, the more I fall in love with you. I can't wait to. As he said that, he just giggled. Shugu said, it's too late today. Let's do it tomorrow. General Liu smiled and said, come on, my new wife. Today is the day. What do you want? Just tell me, and I will ask someone to do it. Do it. Come on. Let's go out of the city together. As he said this, he came and grabbed Shugu's hand. Shugu smiled and said, marriage is a big matter. You are so impatient. General Liu said with a smile, you don't know. I missed you as soon as I saw you. Until today, I have waited enough. The wedding day has been delayed by one more day. I'm in such a hurry. Otherwise, if we live in the same courtyard, it would be inconvenient if I were upstairs and you were downstairs, wouldn't it? He raised his shoulders again. Shugu moved her eyebrows, looked at General Liu, bit her lower lip with her teeth, and nodded to him. As Shugu nodded, she seemed to snort slightly, but General Liu didn't hear it. He smiled and said, how about it? Did you agree? Shugu smiled and said, okay, today is the day. Why not? I'll give you a good time too. General Liu laughed all over his body. They all trembled, raised their hands in salute to Shugu, and said, thank you for agreeing. I can prepare whatever you want. Shugu said, unless you want something yourself, I don't want anything at all. In addition, I have one more thing to ask of you. Please send for guards and a car to take me home to say goodbye to my father. If you have some spare cash, please give me some so that I can give it to my father. Order wedding wine, invite relatives and friends, and he will support me. General Liu said, okay. This is a trivial matter. I should have paid a little as a betrothal gift. I don't have much cash at home. I remember I have more than 2,000 yuan. You can take it all. Anyway, whatever your father needs, I will take care of it for him. Shugu counted with her fingers and said with a smile, it won't cost much. If a poor family has too much money, it will bring trouble. Just give me 1,400 yuan. General Liu said, what kind of algorithm is this? Shugu said, you don't have to ask. After some time, you may understand. He burst out laughing so hard that his waist was bent. General Liu also smiled and said, this child is naughty. He played a charade. I didn't guess. So he laughed like this. Okay, I will do it. Then he took out 1,200 yuans in banknotes and 200 yuans in cash from the box. Come, give it to Shugu, and say, I know your father likes to see foreign money in vain, so I'll find him some foreign money. Shugu smiled and said, I guess you can do it. That's what I was thinking. I haven't said it yet. General Liu said with a smile, am I just a worm in your petty mind? Is there anything I can't guess about your thoughts? After hearing this, Shugu felt really sad. It was disgusting, and I laughed so much that I fell on the table with laughter. General Liu patted her on the shoulder and said, don't be naughty. The car has been prepared. Go back quickly. I'm still waiting for you to come back and leave the city. At that moment, Shugu looked up at the clock on the wall. It was already past 4 o'clock. She really didn't dare to delay, so she went out immediately and took the car home. On both sides of the car, 2 guards stood on each side, forming a weather-tight circle. Shugu looked at it and was so happy that she just smiled. After a while, the car arrived at the door of the house, and Guan Shoufeng was waiting at the door. Shugu got out of the car, took her father's hand and went into the house. She smiled and said, fortunately, you are at home. Otherwise, I would have to go find my senior brother, which would be troublesome. As she said that, she held a big hand in her hand. Hand towel bag, placed on the table. Shoufeng looked at it. He was inexplicable at first. Later, when Shugu explained it in detail, he stroked his beard and nodded, and said, you are right. I am teaching you some moves. I am a little tired of teaching them. I want to use General Liu to find a way out. It's a good day. Don't let me wait. Just go quickly. Shugu walked out of the house with a smile, and said goodbye to her 3 neighbors, saying that she already had a family background. I'm back. See you all. The neighbors in the courtyard were very surprised to see her not coming back for several days, and now she came back in a car with soldiers to say goodbye. However, they knew the tempers of her father and son. They didn't like people asking about their work, so they didn't feel comfortable asking. They just guessed. Shugu must be involved in marriage issues. When Shugu went out, Everyone was going to send her to the car, but Shofeng stopped her in the yard and said, "There are soldiers there. You can't afford to meet them." The neighbors in the courtyard knew that Shofeng had a bad temper and did not dare to disobey, so they had to stop. Shofeng heard the whine of the car and was already far away. Then he cupped his hands to his neighbors and said, "We have been together for such a long time. I have something to ask you. I wonder if you are willing to do it." The neighbors said, "As long as I can do it, I will always help." Shofeng said, "My eldest girl has a family now. She will leave Beijing at noon tonight. I am a little reluctant and want to give her a gift, but I have a new gift around me. I'm afraid it won't be safe if I keep it at home. I don't know if it's okay to keep it in 3 separate homes." Everyone heard that it was just a small matter, so they all agreed. Shofeng then divided the 1,200 yuan's banknote into 3 shares of 400 yuans and wrapped them in cloth. The 200 yuan in cash was put in a belt and tied around his waist. Then he put these 3 cloth bags in a neighbor's house in each courtyard and said to them, "If I don't come back by 2 o'clock in the evening, please open this cloth bag and take a look. But if I come back before 2 o'clock, I have to ask you to return the original package to me." After saying this, he cupped his hands and left immediately without waiting for the neighbor to reply. Shofeng walked to the street and called Jiashu at a mature house. It happened that Jiashu went home and took the call. Shofeng then said, "I have a few important words. I'll talk to you face to face. I'll be waiting for you in a small restaurant called Zixianfeng in Sipalu. Don't come hungry. We can drink a lot." Jiashu thought, Shugu must have said what she said in the park when she went back. This old man is an impatient person. He wanted to do something as soon as he heard it, so he asked me to go for an interview. This is the old man's passion, and he must not let it down. He promised to come right away. When Jiashu arrived at the 4th archway, there was indeed a tavern with a happy encounter sign hanging at the door. Shofeng was seen leaning on the railing at the entrance of the building, looking around at people. When he saw Jiashu, he yelled, "Here, here." Jiashu walked upstairs from the restaurant and saw that a table near the entrance of the building had already been set with food and wine, but there were 2 sets of cups and chopsticks. It was clear that Shofeng was waiting for the table. Shofeng asked Jiashu to sit across from him and asked, "Brother, did you bring any money?" Jiashu said, "I brought a little money, but not much. If uncle is short of money, I will go home and get it right away." Shofeng shook his hands and said, No, I made a small fortune today, so I don't need to borrow money. I asked you if you have money. I mean, you should treat me to the dinner today." Jiashu smiled. "Tao, naturally. If you are wider or younger than me, should you invite me?" "That's not what I said. Let me tell you the truth. After today's dinner, we will break up. We have been good friends for a few months. Shouldn't you give me a farewell party?" Jiashu was surprised when he heard this, and asked, "Where is uncle going all of a sudden? What about the older girl?" Shofeng said, "We didn't settle down anywhere. Today we can go wherever we like. If we get tired of staying there tomorrow, we will move to another place without any worries. It won't be sudden or unexpected. My family consists of father and son, so naturally they are inseparable." Jiashu said, "Uncle is a heroic figure in the world. I don't dare to ask more, but I wonder when uncle will leave. Will there be any time for us to meet in the future?" Shofeng said, "I'll leave after finishing the drink. As for whether we will meet in the future, it's hard to say. For example, when we made friends on the overpass, we never expected it." As he spoke, he brought the beer bottle and asked Joshua poured a cup into the cup, and then poured another cup for himself. He raised the cup, compared it to Joshua, and said with a smile, "Old brother, let's have a drink first. Don't talk about those gossips." So the 2 of them had a drink together. After taking another drink, Jiashu said, "Since I'm bidding farewell to uncle, I should be the one to pour the wine." Then he took the wine pot and poured beer for Guan Shofeng. "Drink Shofeng wine whenever you can, without skipping a glass." After a while, after drinking more than a pound of wine, Shofeng put his hand on the glass, stood up, and said with a smile, "That's enough wine. I still have to hurry. I have 2 words to say to you." Joshua said, "Just tell me whatever you want to say. As long as it is something I can do, I will do my best." Shofeng said, "There is one thing you may not know yet. There is a person who has suffered a lot for you." Then he told him everything about Fengshi's illness caused by the beating and the fact that he was sleeping in the hospital. He added, "According to our child, She fell asleep in a daze and kept saying she was sorry to you. It seems that this child is still young and ignorant. You can't say she is ungrateful. You'd better think of a way to help her. Jiashu was silent for a while, then said, even if I don't care about her shortcomings, I'm a student. How can I compete with a powerful warlord? Isn't she in his palm now? Shofeng raised his head and smiled. Can a powerful person catch what he loves? That's not necessarily true. The king of Chu was victorious in all battles, but he couldn't save Yu Ji. I said this casually, and I'm not asking you to catch her back now. If you have a chance in the future, don't remember the past. Jiashu said, sure enough, she has changed her mind. If there is another opportunity, I am naturally willing to guide her to the right path again. Road. But my heart made her very sad. Now there is someone else I trust the most, but it is not her. Xu Feng smiled and said, I heard our children say that you also know a Miss He, who looks similar to the girl from the Shen family. But these days, it is more difficult to deal with the eldest daughter. Then again, who you trust is up to you, and others don't need to talk nonsense. But this child may need someone to take care of her soon. If you have the chance, just take care of her. It's getting late, and I have to rush out of the city. I want to eat. So he called the waiter to bring the rice, poured the soup into the rice bowl, ate several bowls of rice in one breath, put down the bowl and chopsticks, stood up and said, we will meet again later. The waiter handed him a towel, and he wiped it while walking away. Jiashu never asked where he was going or why he was leaving, and stared at him going downstairs in a daze. When I turned around and leaned over to the window, I saw him carrying a small bag on his shoulder and had walked to the center of the street. I turned around and saw Jiashu nodding and smiling, and actually walked away with big strides. Here Jiashu thought, this is too strange. Although this old man is a generous person, he is still sentimental. Last time he took Shugu to send me to Fengtai, wasn't he very attached? Why is he so determined to say goodbye this time? Seeing that he was calm on the surface, it seemed that he had something urgent to do in his heart, so he left suddenly. He was a figure in the dust more than 10 years ago, and it is hard to guarantee that he is not reopening the old case. In addition, Shugu pretended to be a servant and went to the Liu family these 2 days, which is also a very dangerous thing. Or it is unknown if she has revealed some flaws. He hesitated in his heart, leaned over the railing and looked for a while, then paid the bill for the wine and food and went home. When Jiashu arrived home, there was a Western-style envelope on the table. There was a word written in rose-purple ink. It was obvious that it was written by Helena. He picked it up and opened it. It said, Jiashu, the Quanning Theater will perform the full version of Nengren Temple tonight, and there will also be a play Shen Tu Xiai Tang. They are 2 very good plays. I have booked box number 3. Please be sure to come. Your good friend Lena. Jiashu was very upset and wanted to use this to have fun. After dinner, Jiashu went to the theater box. As expected, Helena was there alone. When she saw Jiashu, she quickly took the cloak on the chair next to him, meaning that he should sit down. He sat down naturally. After watching Shen Tu Xiai Tang, the next play was Nengren Temple. Jiashu watched the play and nodded continuously. Lena said with a smile, didn't you say you don't understand opera? Why do I enjoy watching it so much tonight? Jiashu said with a smile, it's just okay. But I really agree with the identity of the woman in this play. Helena said, this play Nengren Temple and Shen Tu Xiai Tang are connected in one place, which is very interesting. If Xian had the ability of this 13th sister, wouldn't she have saved herself from risking her life for revenge? Jiashu said, nothing in the world is perfect. This 13th sister was really full of energy in the scene of Nengren Temple. It's a pity that the author of The Heroes of the Children forced her to marry in Long, and she ended up being the mistress of the family. Helena said, in fact, where in the world is there such a person as 13th sister? When Chinese people talk about martial arts, they always turn it into mythology. 2 days ago, I watched a play here where Hong Shan stole the box. That Hong Shan was just like a fairy, which is a bit of an exaggeration. Jiashu said, of course. No matter what the matter is, when it comes to the pen of a writer or the stage of an actor, it will be painted. If it is said to be chivalrous, it is not uncommon. Helena said, seeing is believing. No matter how miraculous people say it is, you have to see it to believe it. You said there is a swordsman. Have you seen it? Jiashu said, I may not have seen a swordsman, but if you are talking about a chivalrous warrior, of course I have seen it. Not only I have seen it, Maybe you have seen it too. Because this kind of person will never show his true face. When you meet him, he is just like an ordinary person. How can you know it? Helena said, your words are too unfounded. Seeing it, but not knowing it is the same as not seeing it at all. Jiashu smiled and said, listen to the play, don't argue. At this time, the 13th sister on the stage was holding a knife and acting as a matchmaker with Master and Zhang Jinfeng. Jiashu was just in a trance and waited until the play was over, but sighed. Helena smiled and said, why are you sighing? Jiashu said, Miss, he is a little silly. Helena blushed and smiled. What am I silly about? Jiashu said, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about Miss Yufeng, the 13th sister on the stage, who is a little silly. She is a free and easy person, but she has to be a matchmaker for others. In the end, she still drags herself into the vortex. Isn't that silly? Helena misunderstood herself, so she was embarrassed to say anything more and went out together. When they arrived at the door, she smiled and said to Jiashu, I'm afraid your cousin's wife will make fun of you, so I can only drive you to the entrance of the alley. Jiashu said, no need, I will hire a car to go back myself. So he said goodbye to her and went home. When Jiashu got home, he looked at his watch and it was 1 o'clock. He immediately took off his clothes and went to bed. It's good to think that life is like a dream while lying in bed. It was past 1 o'clock, and amid the sound of gongs and drums, he saw the 13th sister killing the monks of the Black Wind Hill. How lively. Now he is sleeping in bed, and everything is just a bubble. If there really was a Nengren temple back then, it was just like this, and it passed in a flash. But life is obscured by the 7 emotions. Who can see through it? The Guan father and daughter said that they could see through everything. But in fact, people like him who love to fight for justice are the ones who can't see through it at all. I wonder what the father and daughter did after today's separation. Are they resting at this time? Shugu's position is certainly not like the 13th sister, but her enthusiasm is better than the 12th sister's treatment of Mr. An and Miss Zhang. I was so confused that I didn't sleep well all night. It was very late when I got up the next day. In the afternoon, it was time for the university to announce the results, so Joshua went to see the list. Fortunately, he worked hard and was admitted as a regular student in the college entrance examination. A few friends knew about it and said that his big problem had been solved, so they took him to the movies and restaurants. Joshua also felt that he had let go of a worry and should feel happy for a while, so he followed everyone and put the Guan and Shen family's affairs aside for a while. Another day passed. Joshua got up early in the morning. Firstly, he had nothing to worry about, and secondly, he didn't have to prepare for his homework. He remembered that Lena had invited him to watch a play many times. Now he had nothing to do. He should see if there was any good play today. He should invite her back. Thinking of this, he took 2 newspapers and lay on the sofa to read. When he flipped through the newspapers, he saw a headline with special fonts, which was General Liu Dezhu was assassinated in Zishan the night before. Then there were 3 lines of small headlines with the first font, which were the murderer was a young girl who left a message on the wall and disappeared. The case was complicated and the background was unclear. When Joshua saw these lines of big words, his heart began to beat wildly. He hurriedly read the news first. After reading it, he read it carefully again. After reading it carefully, he pondered the words and sentences paragraph by paragraph. His heart was up and down like a storm, tense and depressed, but he lay on the sofa without moving a centimeter. There was a large damp spot on the back of the sofa where my neck was leaning against. I felt that the small clothes on my upper body were tightly stuck to my back. It turned out that the news was, Liu Dezhu, the younger brother of Liu Zunyushi, is a general of Dui. He is currently the head of the 5 provinces tax collection and the director of the Beijing office. He is an important political figure. Recently, Liu married a new wife and wanted to find a smart maid to serve her. The maid agency brought a young girl to meet him. Liu and his new wife were satisfied with her at first sight and accepted her. The girl said her surname was Wu, her father was a farmer, and her mother worked as a maid in the home of General Zhang because of poverty. Liu thought this was common sense and did not investigate further. However, there is a suspicious point here. After the girl started working, the maid introduction did not go to Liu's house to ask for the girl's wages, and the girl did not get bedding from home. As for the so-called General Zhang, I don't know where he is from. The girl worked as a servant in the house for several days, and was very popular with the master. When the new wife fell ill and was admitted to the hospital for treatment, the girl often went in and out of the upper room alone. 3 days ago, Liu suddenly announced that he would marry the girl as his concubine. The girl was also happy and looked very proud, because both parties did not want to disturb their relatives and friends with the happy event. At PM the day before yesterday, he took 2 followers and went to the Badaku in Zishan to spend this happy time. After arriving at Zishan, Liu wanted to stay at the Zishan hotel, but the girl refused. So she left her followers and took 2 sedan chairs to the Jile temple on the mountain to stay overnight. The temple has clean bedrooms for Chinese and Western tourists to rest. The monks in the temple heard that General Liu had arrived and entertained him warmly. They sent people to the Zishan hotel to borrow bedding and prepared wine and food to go up the mountain. At night, Liu ordered the monk to light 2 red candles, and he drank with the girl, chatting and laughing happily. After drinking, the girl helped him to sleep, and the monk held 2 candlesticks to guide him. The monk left, fearing that someone would disturb his good dream, and pulled the door of the inner courtyard for him. The next day, the sun was over the mountain, but the general did not get up. The monk did not dare to urge him, just waited. From morning to noon, from noon to the sun setting in the west, the sleeper still did not get up. The monk thought it was strange, and deliberately made a loud noise in the courtyard to startle him. Because there was no sound in the room, he called and pushed the door open, and saw Liu Gao lying on the bed, but the girl was gone. The monk still thought that Liu was asleep, and the girl might have come out a little, so he shrank back and wanted to leave. Occasionally, he looked up and saw blood spots on the white powder wall, blurred into words. The words said, "Omitted now he has repeatedly abused women and forced himself on me. I lied that the thief had come to the mountain and killed him by pressing his acupuncture points, so as to eliminate a great harm to the country and society. I cut the thief's arm to bleed, and used cotton wool to write on the wall with blood, indicating that I did what I should do, and it had nothing to do with others." 12 o'clock p.m. on month day of year of the Republic of China. Disgruntled woman's temper. The words were roughly readable, and indeed they were in the woman's tone. The monk was horrified, and saw that the person on the bed was already lying stiffly without any breath. He immediately rushed down the mountain to call the police, while calling the city to arrest the thief separately. The military and police agencies considered the case serious, so they secretly and quickly sought clues. Because the guards of Liu's house said that the woman had returned home once before leaving the city, they went to her house to search, but only one empty house was left, and the neighbors in the courtyard had also moved out early in the morning. After asking the neighbors on the street, they found that the family had a father and a daughter named Guan, not Wu. Guan was a coach for a living, and he was also quite well behaved. Why did his daughter do this is unknown. When the servant agency was arrested, the owner said that the girl was not introduced by the agency. The female partner, commonly known as a runner who brought the girl to Liu's house, said that she met the girl near Liu's house and offered 2 yuan to bring her to Liu's house to find a relative. Unexpectedly, Liu accepted her and caused this disaster. Therefore, he had no way to answer the girl's whereabouts. From this, it can be seen that the assassination of Liu by Guan's father and daughter was actually planned in advance. The military and police are still investigating the murderer, and the details are not convenient to publish. But it is said that there are some clues to find, and it may not be difficult to get to the bottom of it. Jiashu thought that the first part of the news was fine, but the second part said that people who had some contact with Guan seemed to be arrested and questioned. Although few people knew about his contact with Guan's father and daughter, it was not absolutely unknown. If I act on the street and get caught by the detective, it would be a small matter for me to go to jail, but it would implicate my cousin and make my mother in the south anxious. It would be better to hide for a while and wait until this matter is settled before going to class. Jiashu made up his mind and pretended to be very calm, slowly walking to the north room. Though he was also taking a newspaper and reading it on the sofa, he put down the newspaper and said to Jiashu, "Have you read the newspaper? There is an assassination case." Jiashu smiled faintly and said, "I have seen it, but it is not a big deal. This matter must have a political background." He raised his head and thought about it, shook his head, and said, "This move was poisoned by my wife. It's a pity that the means are a bit despicable. It's a beauty trap." Jiashu said, "It doesn't seem to have a political background." Though he said, "You haven't entered the official career yet. How can you know the intrigues in the official career? This woman I know was bought from Mount Mi, and the reward is always more than 100,000. Bohee was talking happily, lighting a cigar and smoking it, reciting the recent political situation by heart. Jiashu held a book in his hand, just smiling, waiting for him to finish, and then said, I want to go to Tianjin to see my uncle today, and come back when school starts. I should have gone a long time ago, but I delayed it because the results were not announced, and I had a minor illness that was not healed. Mrs. Tao smiled in the room, and said, I agree that you should go. I talked about you with my second aunt on the phone the day before yesterday. It's just that I'm not in a hurry to leave today. Jiashu smiled and said, I have nothing to do in Beijing, just waiting for school to start. I am impatient, and I want to do what I say I want to do. Mrs. Tao said, you can leave today, you can take the 4:30 train, and you can take your time. Jiashu said, is there no train before 4 o'clock? Mrs. Tao said, why are you in such a hurry? There is a train at 2 o'clock, but it is a slow train. You will be even more anxious if you take that train. Jiashu was afraid that Bohee and his wife would be suspicious, so he did not say anything more, and went back to his room to pack up his things. He did not know why, but although he tried to be calm on the surface, he was extremely flustered in his heart. After lunch, Jiashu paced back and forth in the corridor, looking at his watch from time to time to see if it was 3 o'clock. He paced back and forth a few times, and because the servants were watching him, he was afraid that they would find out. So he went back to his room and lay on the bed. After finally waiting until more than 3 o'clock, he said goodbye to Mrs. Tao and went to the station. He waited until he was sitting in the second-class car, and his heart was a little more at ease, but he heard a commotion on the platform, and immediately several patrolmen and a group of people came back. He only heard, 2 more have been caught, 2 more have been caught. When Jiashu heard this, his heart almost jumped out of his chest and jumped into his mouth. He quickly took out a book from his bag, put on a very natural look, and slightly tilted his body to read it. He heard someone in the same car say, the pickpocket was caught. Jiashu felt that he had misunderstood again, and a cold sweat dried on his body. He had no other thoughts in his mind now, just hoping that the train would leave early. After a while, the wheels rolled, and soon went out of the east gate. Jiashu felt relieved, and then he had time to appreciate the scenery outside the train window. He thought to himself, the fortune and misfortune of life are really unpredictable. Unexpectedly, I suddenly have to go to Tianjin today. When the old man chauffing said goodbye to me yesterday, why didn't he let me know anything, so that I wouldn't have been alarmed today? Then he thought, I was a little worried. In the past few months, I have only been to Guan's house 4 or 5 times. Who doesn't have friends in society? If a friend commits a crime, not everyone will be suspected. Not to mention that my relationship with Guan Shofeng is not enough to attract people's attention. As for my relationship with Liu Dezhu, no one knows except Guan's father and daughter. Unless it is Fengxi, she knows that Shugu went there for me, but if she wants to tell me, she can't get away from it either. So it seems that I am too cowardly to run away. Shofeng mentioned Fengxi again and again, saying that I have a chance to meet her. Could it be that Fengxi was also involved in this secret? But in fact, it couldn't be possible. Fengxi became a lunatic in the hospital, and her mother and uncle were extremely unbearable. How could they discuss such a major issue? I was thinking about this alone on the train, and I arrived in Tianjin unknowingly. Jiashu's uncle Fan Duanben has a house in the French concession. After Jiashu got off the train, he hired a rickshaw and went to his uncle's house. This is a Western-style building facing the road, with an iron gate outside. Inside is a small courtyard with some flowers and trees. Facing it is a red brick building in the shape of a character, standing tall. After entering the iron gate, a messenger came out of the small gatehouse and quickly took the suitcase and said, we received a call from Beijing and we're planning to pick up the nephew. You are here. Jiashu said, is the master at home? He replied, he went to Hebei. I heard there was a social event. I asked, where are the 2 young ladies? The answer was, they went to the movies. A sound came from the window of the building. The waiter replied, the madam is playing cards. I asked, where is the concubine? The answer was, there is the concubine of the Zhang family. The young mistress of the Li family invited her to go to the Zhanyuan company to buy things and watch opera. You can take a rest. As he said that, he carried the suitcase upstairs. Jiashu asked, who are the people playing cards? The waiter said, they are a few ladies from the same hometown. They are in a car trading club. Today this one, tomorrow that one. They just started. Jiashu said, since they just started, you don't need to notify them. I'll wait for the master to come back downstairs. So he went downstairs again and read books and newspapers in Duanben's study, waiting for them to come back. After a while, Shui and Jinji came back first. Shui is now 17 years old and Jinji is 14 years old. Both of them are very lively girls. When Jinji heard that Jiashu was coming, she shouted in the yard, "Brother is here, where is he? Why didn't you give us a message earlier?" When Jiashu came out to see, he saw Jinji wearing a short green gabardine suit with a large section of white legs above and below the knees, jumping with her leather shoes, and said, "Brother, congratulations. You are very happy." When she said this, the red knot flower in her messy hair jumped and flickered, and she looked very happy. Jiashu was puzzled. Where did the joy come from? But because of this, there was an unexpected change. To know what the change is, I will explain it next time. Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.